This humble little bean is a soya bean. It's a powerhouse of protein. This is a young one. We call them edamame beans. They're delicious as they are, but more normally we will leave them on the plant until they change shape and colour like these here. They're used to make foods like veggie mince, veggie burgers, soya milk and tofu. And they're highly nutritious. They have all 9 essential amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. Sadly though, most of the soybeans that are produced in the world go to feed farmed animals, and this is associated with the destruction of the rainforest in South America. This isn't the case though with food that is produced for humans. The soya there is more generally produced in other areas, including Europe. In this session I'm going to be concentrating on tofu. Tofu or bean curd has been used for thousands of years in countries like China, Japan, Vietnam and Thailand, and there are many different types of tofu. The one you're most likely to come across in the supermarket is probably this one, by Cauldron. Tofu like this is very useful in stir fries and curries, but without adding any flavouring, it is very plain. It can be fried or baked, which I'm going to show you later on, and it's set with calcium sulfate, making it a very good source of calcium in the diet. This one, by the Tofu Company, is smoked. It's very firm and it does have a smoky flavour, making it really tasty and useful. This marinated tofu, also by Cauldron, is useful again in stir fries and fajitas, so it's ready to use and quite tasty. I've also got one tofu basilico. It's a herby one from Thai Fun. That's nice in salads, just chopped up in salads, and again ready to eat. Silken tofu is very different. It's soft and shouldn't be substituted for firm tofu in recipes, but it's wonderful in sauces and also in desserts. In this session I'm going to be doing 3 recipes that show the versatility of tofu. It's an amazing food. I'm going to be showing you how to create baked tofu kebabs with a rich satay sauce, as well as scrambled tofu, which is brilliant as part of a vegan breakfast. It's a substitute for scrambled eggs. And also, believe it or not, a chocolate torte using silken tofu. I'm going to make tofu kebabs with a satay sauce. So the tofu I'm using is a firm tofu and I'm going to bake it, which makes it really firm, and before that I'm going to marinate it. That means allow it to absorb flavours, and I'll explain what I'm going to put into my marinade now. So I'm getting a bowl and I'm going to crush 2 cloves of garlic. Just peel your garlic, and I'm crushing it rather than chopping it this time because it needs to be quite fine, but if you prefer you can just chop it very finely. I'm going to pop it straight into that bowl. And this is enough for 2 people. I'm also going to be using some root ginger. I'm going to slice off a small piece, about ½ centimetre in thickness. I want about a teaspoonful of the root ginger. So slice off the skin. It's very soft. You can do it with a spoon, a teaspoon or a knife. And then again, we want that quite finely chopped. So I'm now going to add this into the bowl with the garlic, and the other ingredients for this marinade are soy sauce. I'm going to add about a tablespoonful of soy sauce and some freshly squeezed lime juice. Again, about a little bit more, actually, about 2 tablespoonfuls of that. That's lovely. And about a tablespoonful of vegetable oil. So stir that around and you've got a lovely marinade that the vegetables are going to be covered in, and then they're going to soak up the lovely flavours. So now that's prepared, I'm going to do my tofu. So I have a block of tofu, the firm tofu, which I've actually pressed for a little bit longer to get some of the water out of it. So what you can do with that is, when you take it out of the pack, wrap it in a tea towel and put a couple of cans of baked beans or something on top of it to weigh it down a bit and get rid of a little bit of the moisture. This isn't absolutely essential, but it does help to firm up the tofu if it's a little bit soft, and it does depend on the make that you're using. So I've got quite a nice chunk of it here that I'm going to cut into 16 pieces. So I'm cutting down 4 slices like that, and then each of those I'm going to cut into 4 as well. And those are going to go into a bowl, a shallow dish, which we're going to be putting the vegetables into as well. Vegetables, I've got tomatoes, baby tomatoes, or you could use larger ones and cut them in half. I've got a few pieces of yellow pepper. I've also got some small mushrooms. You could use larger ones and cut them in half. These are baby ones. Another nice thing to use is slices of sweet corn or chunks of onion, and vary it according to what vegetables are reasonably priced or in season. I'm also going to use a courgette, so I'm going to slice that. Some of the courgette slices are a little bit big, so I'm going to cut them in half. So you want the vegetables to be a similar size. So what I'm going to do now is put all the vegetables into this shallow dish and pour the marinade over and allow everything to have a nice soak in it. Just pop the mushrooms in as well. So I'm going to leave that now for an hour for it to take on the flavours of the marinade. So these have been soaking for an hour. And I'm going to cook the tofu now. It's quite quick, really. You need to just put the oven on about gas number 6, 200 degrees centigrade, and I'm going to put all the tofu on a baking tray, non-stick baking tray, and bake it in the oven. Another way of cooking tofu is to marinate it like this and simply fry it. But I find this a lot easier, actually. You can sort of forget about it, and it does firm up very nicely. So not only is it flavoursome, but it's a nice texture. So my oven's nice and hot, and I'm going to put it in. It's all in one layer, okay, and it'll cook more evenly that way. Meanwhile, I'm going to make the satay sauce. To accompany this, it gives a nice flavour, an appearance and a moisture to the dish. If you don't want to use peanuts, if you've got an allergy or if someone in school's got an allergy, you could use a sweet chilli sauce or you could make a spicy tomato sauce. Use your imagination for that. So with the satay sauce, you will be using peanut butter. I've got a really nice one here. It hasn't got any salt added. In fact, it is simply peanuts, ground up peanuts. And like the tofu, peanuts, of course, are very high in protein. I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoonfuls of this peanut butter. I'm going to warm it very gently. I'm going to add a little bit of water along with the marinade from the vegetables. So we don't want that marinade to be wasted. So I'm going to take my vegetables out because they're going to be popped onto the kebabs later. And all this lovely marinade is going to go into the sauce with the peanut butter. We've got lovely pieces of ginger and garlic still in here, and we don't want to throw them away. Keep stirring it, don't take your eyes off this sauce because you don't want it to catch. It smells absolutely delicious. I'm just finishing off the sauce. I'm adding a little bit more water as I go. You do want it to be quite runny, and also test it to see if you need any more soy sauce in it or even some more lime juice. So you can see it's quite a nice consistency now. So I'll just pop that at the back while I get out the tofu, which has been in for 20 minutes. And that looks about right. It's nice and golden and firm. And I'm going to now thread my kebabs. So these kebab sticks, the wooden ones, I've soaked them for about half an hour in some water, otherwise they'd burn if you don't do that. And what you do now is simply thread on the vegetables, alternating them according to different colours. So as you can see, they're really attractive. They haven't been cooked yet. And this is a really good way to get your 5 a day. That's one of the beauties of a vegan diet. It's so easy to get lots of fruits and vegetables into your diet. So I'm going to carry on doing these kebab sticks, alternating with the tofu and the vegetables. And that's the last one done. I'm now going to put them all on the same tray that I used for the tofu because we're going to grill them for about 10 minutes. And you just need to make sure, just keep an eye on them and turn them around as they cook. So on an average grill, pop those in. And that'll give me a chance to tidy up for a few minutes. They look good. So I'm going to warm up the satay sauce. It goes a little bit thicker if it's cool. That's lovely. And I'm now going to, I've already cooked some rice, You can use brown rice or white rice. I've used white today, although brown rice is more nutritious. So I've got that ready in my bowl. And I'm going to use 3 kebabs per person. The sauce I'm going to put into a dish so that people can help themselves and pour over as much as they like. And I'm going to drizzle some of this sauce over the top. I'm also going to add a little bit of coriander as a garnish. You don't have to have that, but it just adds a little bit of colour around the edge. So this is a lovely meal for any time of the year, but it's particularly good if you want to do it on the barbecue in the summer. Hope you enjoy trying them. I'm going to make scrambled tofu. It's so quick and easy and convenient for a quick lunch. It's also nutritious because it's got tofu in it, so high in protein and calcium, low in fat. I'm going to add some spinach for extra nutrition and colour, but that's not essential. So I'm going to start by crumbling the tofu. I'm going to do it with my hands. You could use a fork or a potato masher, but it's much easier to just get your hands in there and crumble it up. Right, that's broken up enough now. So now that's all ready, I am going to fry an onion. I've already chopped my onion. Just heat a little bit of oil, about a tablespoonful of vegetable oil. So I've got my onion chopped. I've also got a clove of garlic ready chopped. And once the oil is warm, just pop a little bit of onion in to see if it's going to sizzle, as we've done in other recipes. It's warm enough now, so pop that in. And to cook that for just a few minutes. I'm going to add the garlic now. And just stir it around for a couple of minutes. Being careful not to catch it, you don't want it burning. And turning it down a little. So that's cooked, and I'm going to put in the tofu, the crumbled up tofu, which looks quite colourless at first. And I think that's one of the things with tofu. When you take it out of the pack, it does look rather bland, and it's really what you do with it that counts. So this is obviously going to absorb the flavours of the onion and the garlic. You can put other things in. You can put different spices in, like some cumin seeds, a bit of paprika or something like that. This is a fairly plain one, but you can use this as a base. So to give it some colour, I'm going to use some turmeric. And this is a spice that's used a lot in Indian cooking. It's from a root or a rhizome. It's actually used in Indian medicine, and it is very beneficial. It's full of antioxidants as well. But really with this, the main thing is that it's going to give some nice colour to the tofu. And it's what gives so many Indian meals the lovely colour. Just be careful you don't get it on your clothes because it can stain a bit. So it's about a teaspoonful. Just incorporate it so that everything is covered with the turmeric. And you can add salt and pepper, or I'm going to use a little bit of soy sauce, just, you know, depending on what you like and how much salt you take. I'm going to add some freshly ground black pepper. And because I like it a little bit creamier, I'm going to put in a little bit of soya milk. You can use silken tofu as well, which makes it even creamier. That's almost cooked now, and I'm going to add the spinach. So it's washed spinach, it's baby spinach I'm using, so smaller leaves, or you could use bigger leaves and chop them up. At first it looks as if there's loads of spinach in there, but it soon wilts down and mixes in. The spinach is really nutritious and contains iron and vitamin C. Well, that's ready to serve now. I've already prepared some toast. So it's been pretty quick and easy to do. The thing is as well, you could easily have this as part of a vegan breakfast with some sausages, tomatoes, mushrooms, baked beans, and it's really delicious. I'm going to make a chocolate torte using silken tofu. You might never have thought of using tofu in a dessert, but it's actually very successful because of its creamy texture. The first thing I'm going to do is make the base, and it's going to be made from some vegan biscuits and some margarine. So I'm starting off with some Vitalite dairy-free margarine, which I'm going to put into a pan and gently melt. You just need to keep an eye on it because you want it to melt rather than burn, obviously. I've weighed out 75 grams and that's going to melt in the pan. In the meantime, I'm going to blend my biscuits. I've weighed out 200 grams of vegan biscuits. I'm using hobnobs, which are nice and crunchy, a little bit of oats in there to give texture. And we simply put them into a blender, a food processor. If you don't have a food processor, put them in a plastic bag, seal them up, and literally bash them with a rolling pin, and that works very well as well. You just need to make sure that they're all mixed up and you haven't got any lumps in there. So you'll see that they are just finely crushed now. The margarine has melted, so I'm going to add these crumbs to it in the pan. Just stir it all in. And with this, you don't have to make this sort of a base. You could make a base with chopped nuts and dates put together in a food processor. That's really nice as well. You can vary it. So this is well stirred together now, and I'm going to put it into a tin that has a loose bottom, a cake tin with a loose bottom, so that it's easy to get out of later. So here's my tin, and I simply pour this in. And press it down so that it's nice and firm. and evenly spread. It doesn't have to be perfect, just make sure there are no holes in it. I'm going to pop it into the fridge for at least half an hour. Putting it in the fridge, make sure that the margarine is solidified and we're going to have a nice crisp bottom. And we're going to concentrate on doing the topping now. I'm going to move this out of the way because I'm going to be using a stick blender for this. But the first thing I'm going to do is melt my chocolate. I've got a pan and I'm going to put a small quantity of water in there, and the chocolate's going to go over the top. It's not going to touch the water, but the water's just going to simmer gently and melt the chocolate. The chocolate I'm using is one that's reasonably priced from Lidl. It is fair trade, a dark chocolate. Most dark chocolate is vegan, but do check, look for those ingredients on the back in case it's got whey powder or something like that, and it may have milk in bold, so avoid that one. I've got 1.5 packs ready in there, and I'm just going to chop up this final one. You can use chocolate drops. You can get baking ones, dark ones from the supermarkets. They're really handy and they do melt very quickly. But I'm just breaking this up into small pieces. A lot of chocolate as well that you can get now does have that creamy texture. You can get milky style chocolate. For instance, Moo Free, they do a very good range of vegan chocolate that children particularly enjoy. But I think it is better to have a dark chocolate for this chocolate torte. And by the way, it might seem like a lot of chocolate and a lot of tofu as well, but this torte actually serves 10 people because it's very rich. You can half it, obviously, make a smaller one. So when you're melting chocolate, don't overheat it. You just need to make sure it melts very gently, and then we're able to incorporate it with the tofu. I'm going to keep an eye on that, but in the meantime I'm going to blend my tofu using a stick blender, or you could use a food processor. I've got 1.5 packs of silken tofu, so that's about 500 grams of the silken tofu. I've drained the water off and I'm going to put it into a container and blend it. And it really looks like thick double cream when it's blended. I'm going to add a teaspoonful of vanilla essence. You can use other flavourings like grated orange, or even coffee, or ginger, like crystallised ginger is nice. Keeping an eye on the chocolate, which is just starting to melt around the edge. Another way you could melt this chocolate is in a microwave, but just remember you wouldn't put it in a pan straight over the heat, because you could have problems there. This has got some water and it's just gently warming, and that's nicely melted now. So I'm going to incorporate that into the tofu. So scraping up a little bit. I'm going to be using this blender again in a minute, but initially I'm going to put this chocolate in. A spatula is always helpful because you make sure you get all of the chocolate out of the bowl. So we're just popping that in there. And just a reminder that we've got about double the amount of tofu to chocolate. So if you wanted to do a smaller quantity, bear that in mind. When it's blended, I'm going to taste it because it just depends on the sort of chocolate you're using, the sweetness of the chocolate as to how much sweetener you need to put in. So I'm going to blend this again now. Well, that seems to be blended pretty well. I'm going to also add just a little bit of sugar sweetener in the form of agave syrup. I'm going to just put a squeeze of that in because the chocolate's quite dark, but you could use icing sugar or caster sugar instead. And I'm just going to give that one final blitz. So if you were making it, just taste it and see how sweet you want it to be according to the chocolate that you've used. And I'm going to see whether my base has cooled enough now, because I'm going to put this lovely rich topping on the top of it. That's nice and firm, so it means that the ingredients from the base don't merge together with the topping. And you can make this as a chocolate mousse, a pudding, in some little dishes. You haven't got to make it into a torte like this, and it's incredibly easy to do. It doesn't take long at all. I'm just scraping this down with a spatula and getting all that creaminess in. Smoothing it down with a spoon. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to put some decoration on the top. Normally I will put this into the fridge to firm up a little bit more, and then just before I serve it I would decorate it. But today I'm going to show you what I normally do. I've got some almonds, some flaked almonds that I've toasted in the oven for a few minutes, so they're slightly brown and more crisp. So I'm going to scatter some of those on, along with a few dried raspberries, which are very attractive. But you can think up your own ways of decorating the torte. Just sprinkle those on. And these are nice, these dried raspberries that you can get from different supermarkets, and they've got a nice tang to them as well. You can even get things like rose petals as well, which are really beautiful. And then you've got the contrast. So that looks attractive, and it is deliciously creamy, chocolatey. It's even got a little bit of a crunch with the nuts on top. And as I mentioned earlier, that's enough to serve 10 people as a dessert. I would serve it either on its own, but perhaps with a little bit of fruit on the side, or you could use some vegan ice cream on the side as well. This is a good one from Swedish Glass, vanilla. You can get different flavours. Or you can use vegan cream. There are many varieties available in the supermarkets. So I hope you've enjoyed finding out more about tofu. It is an amazing food and so versatile. And I hope too that you're going to try these recipes, go to our website to download them, and enjoy cooking with tofu.